Ben, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got Allison Tanner present, Kevin Charette present, and Ben D'Antonio present, and myself. And we're missing Peter Stompsich and Rooney. And Director Grace is with us, and Stephanie Seacourt. I took the draft of our aggregation plan and I took our goals section and put it all together, melded it. So that we have something that looks like a draft document, at least the 31 first pages that don't have any of the attachments and appendices. I had some additional edits I thought I'd go over, but I wanted to get everybody else's comments on what we've got so far. And I also gave you, I circulated the changes to the goals section that we made last time. Kevin was concerned that we were going to rapidly reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. Now we do it a little more gradually. It was good. We made those changes. I love it.
I do have some comments on the goals and objectives.
Yes.
So if you, under Portsmouth policy goals, in 2018, the stated goal to be net zero in carbon emissions, is there a by when? You know, what date did we set?
There's not a by when. That was never.
There should be.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, potentially
Right.
2100 or something. So I mean, like we really should, the city should do that at any rate, say when is the date that we plan to be carbon neutral. Then under competitive rates and expanded choices, there should be tiered options from cheapest to greenest, and the standard default package should be competitive in price with, and it just says utility. So I'm assuming the default utility should be in there.
Yes.
That's good clarifying language.
Allison, what page are you on? So I can get the chart.
I am just on the goals document, front page, yeah, not the whole thing. And then on the next page, Portsmouth should also advocate with CPCNH to buy local New Hampshire or New England wind, hydro, solar. And then it doesn't say anything else. And I was thinking that maybe we put in other sources of green renewable energy or something like that.
Yeah.
To create these options. Because I mean, you know, UNH has been studying the bridge and tidal and things for a while, and maybe that might be something that could come online.
Get methane out.
Yeah, like UNH seems to be using all of that. But and then strong partnership with Eversource. I'm wondering if that should be a separate heading, and then you start the paragraph successful in implementation of Portsmouth Community Power underneath. That's the very
Rather than one of our objectives. Right now, it's
yeah, well, it's not bulleted, you know, so it seems like it needs to be something else. That's all, unless you just want to bullet it, but just to have it come out to the end seems odd.
Oh, so you're saying just drop that sentence down below the.
Yeah, so strong partnership with Eversource, and then underneath that successful implementation.
Yeah, I see those now. 4 minutes, 4 minutes.
okay.
And that was all I had with that.
There was a space inserted. Second to last on that strong partnership, was it and deliver? When you take away the edits, it doesn't have a space there.
So before
Yes.
deliver or
Between and deliver.
Right now it says will require a strong partnership with Eversource as the investor-owned transmission and delivery utility.
It's just a space.
And now that I have found where we are, would you mind telling me again the other earlier changes?
Yeah, no
Sorry.
problem. So, under Portsmouth policy goals in the beginning, I'm just thinking that we should have a due date by that net zero in carbon emissions.
Yeah, and that's the sustainability.
Wasn't that a council?
Well, or probably a council policy.
But I mean, it seems like a big gap to say net zero in carbon and not have any date.
Right, maybe it'd be something as, work with council to establish a date or something like that.
Yeah,
Oh, well, this is a narrative about
yeah, but
past policies that we already have.
yeah, it just seems very
So we're
weird to me to
just-
say net zero in carbon emissions without saying
Right.
by when.
We're describing the 2018 energy policy, which does not have a date.
And maybe it's not appropriate in this format, maybe it should just be a separate recommendation. And I agree with you, it is open-ended.
And then under Portsmouth Community Power Goals, the third line down, it says, and the standard default package should be competitive in price with, my wording is the default utility, preferably with more green power in it, et cetera. And then at the top of the next page, second line down, it just says wind, hydro, solar. And then I would put and other sources of green renewable energy to create these options.
Top of this page.
Well, let's see, maybe mine printed out different from yours.
Oh, I found it. Hydro, so it's
Yeah,
hydro, solar.
comma. And other sources of green renewable energy to create these options, as it says.
Can I suggest a reference to the state RPS Class 1 eligibility?
Sure, could you explain that to us a little bit?
Sure. Every state that has an RPS program usually sets up a couple of different tiers or classifications of technologies that are eligible for RPS. And generally speaking, the top tier includes things like wind and solar and tidal and hydro and other things. But when it comes to writing a document like this, sometimes it's helpful to reference, let's say, the state's determination of eligibility so that we're not in a situation where we're needing to amend the document later to allow for a different type of resource. You can also maybe sidestep controversial resources like biomass. And so if we were to point to state regulation or state law, we could, adopt their list of renewable resources, and it would avoid the need to amend the document later and potentially, sidestep some of the more controversial ones. And I don't know exactly if it's Class 1 or Class A in New Hampshire. I just haven't looked at it in a while. I look at a lot of different states, but whatever the top tier or the primary growth tier of the renewable portfolio standard, that would be the suggestion to reference to.
So might it be other sources of green renewable energy in parens in accordance with New Hampshire standard, something like that? Is that what you're looking for?
Something like that. Maybe we would get the exact terminology of the New Hampshire renewable portfolio standard, but yeah, just something along those lines. You could, reference the eligibility of something else. Just a
Yes.
suggestion.
something like class 1 RPS eligibility according to New Hampshire regulations.
Yep, getting much closer. Yep, sounds good.
Not consistent with,
Renewable portfolio standards. So we just wanted to, in compliance with New Hampshire. Yes, which is renewable portfolio standards.
And then take out state.
I think we got it.
And then you got the last one.
Yes.
Stephanie. Okay,
Tom, I was just asking for comments on the draft that we have so far. Allison had some changes to the goals, which we incorporated. And the current,
You wanna do a save, or show a normal, all normal and then forward it off to everybody so we can do a final. Blessing.
you're right, that it had to be the council that would set a date for net zero. That recommendation.
well, we put as recommended by the city council. Following admissions, net zero and carbon emissions.
Well, the problem is that section is a description of the policy already on the books.
Oh, okay, well then we'll just leave it out.
there's,
But it
there's the
goes-
next phrase, sorry. Beneath that paragraph and the links, there's Portsmouth Community Power can achieve both of these, et cetera. As the next step in the city's path to net zero, maybe that's a place to reference. Following city council direction.
I think, it's something that the Sustainability Committee and council should take up, I think this is a set of goals and policies, or a set of goals, and I don't think we need to be too fine a point on it this time.
As long as this committee is taking it to do,
Yeah,
to bring it forth.
Right,
To the sustainability in the council.
but there's get the question, do we have work to do as an energy advisory committee?
well, I was,
Pushing for a net zero date. Yeah, that's not.
That date should be based on some analysis of what is
Possible.
aggressively doable and not just a date.
Yes, and that gets into.
so I would suggest maybe we have a climate action plan that's coming out, it's an opportunity to kind of, that's, we'll be putting a lot of things into context. Give us some ideas of the things we need to be achieving. So,
Other feedback on this. Tom, I took the goals and merged them into the larger VAB. Yeah, the larger, yeah. Get these changes incorporated. I just had a couple of things in the larger EAP. Bring that up, Stephanie. On page 2, obviously we need to minutes.
Do you have a copy of the, I didn't see it at the top, do you have a copy of the seal? City seal?
I can put it in, I don't have access to it here.
Page 2. First paragraph, just need to specify Portsmouth, and still see it says. Oh, it keeps jumping. Yeah, there you go. I'm drawing my mouse.
Actually,
There's no seal.
so, sorry, Counselor, where do you want to add Portsmouth?
There's a section called overview of the Portsmouth Power. See that? Second.
Yes.
Yeah. Power Fair City.
Either the city of Portsmouth or Portsmouth's, so take out the in front of Portsmouth's. It should just be Portsmouth, not Portsmouth's. Because you have residents.
Portsmouth, residents, yeah.
Then page 19. Here to operate.
Where's that? Yeah,
Near-term operational requirements. It's paragraphs. While accruing a reserve fund sufficient to ensure long-term financial stability and additionally offering voluntary products that retail customers opt up to exceed as well. It's net metering supply rates. In my mind, I thought it might be stronger to more forcefully stay offerings with renewable power as opposed to voluntary products that retail customers might not receive. I think that's.
I agree with you.
offerings and additionally offering. I'm not finding it. Instead of voluntary products.
More renewable options.
I do think there's a goal to offer eventually potentially energy efficiency. Right, time use, different types of rate structures, considering it product. So there's some of that in addition to.
Options, comma. Other voluntary products.
So you're leaving this. So
You
like.
wanna save this? It's just made me anxious.
Okay, so we're still, that retail customers may opt up to receive is still modifying voluntary products.
Yeah.
It's a very complicated sentence.
It's, yeah, very long. Really huge.
Could put a period after long-term stability.
Yeah.
And say,
Long-term financial stability period,
in addition,
yes. Offering more renewable and other voluntary products.
addition.
Oh,
I'm
you're,
sorry,
I don't
I'm
think you're in the
doing it
right place.
I'm not. Again. Stability period. In addition,
And in, or yeah, in addition.
Come on, why are you doing this to me? So is it in addition, this program will offer or seek to offer? The goal of this program is to offer, we just need a subject to the sentence.
In addition, comma, to offer more renewable options and other voluntary products that retail customers may opt up to receive.
No, we're missing something there.
Yeah.
Additional community power.
Well,
Can offer
additionally,
additional offerings, or can be.
These are all things that reserve. funds.
In addition, there's a potential for additional offerings.
Such as,
Yeah, such as.
Energy efficiency services.
The reserve
I think if
fund.
Peter's on,
Yeah.
if Peter was in the room, I think he would say that.
So in addition, the reserve fund
Yeah.
might offer,
Could offer, potentially offer,
We hope will offer.
aspirationally offer.
That's it.
so might, could, which word did we settle on?
Would support or would fund.
And then you get rid of what's that.
Yeah.
Options.
So
or offering more renewable options and other voluntary products.
That's good. Support offering.
just need to fix this.
Take out two.
Support.
And I think there should be an and between more renewable options and other voluntary products.
Any other comments?
Just the, the administrator just insert the seal at the top. And you had the same comment that you had about finding it was the city, towns, community.
Yes,
There's
there's
that
another
first
instance.
It's in that first page. Coalition template instructions. Well, that's just, does that even, coalition template, does that go away?
That all goes.
That all goes away, never mind that. Delete that stuff. You would.
Yeah, and the big section there that is missing still is Peter and Kim. Cameron.
Oh, hey,
Kate, they're working with Eversource and Henry
Yes,
to clean up the
Customer info.
customer, the load data by customer class. So they've received it, and they have questions, and they've right now working on it.
Ben, as long as you're with us, there's an attachment that goes into great detail about net metering. And I wondered if you could review that for us for the November meeting. You know, I think if we get the 31 pages of the main corpus done in October, that's great. And then we can do the attachments in November. But if you could be our guy on the net metering language, just to read it through. Is it good policy? Is it something we fully agree with? Would we want to deviate from what the coalition's drafted at all? Is it accurate? You could just review that for us.
Happy to.
That'd be great. That'd be great. And there's another attachment that asks for a description of our history as an energy committee, and I'm happy to write that. 3 or 4 paragraphs of that. And I think those are the big rocks in that whole section of attachments. The rest struck me as more descriptive of the coalition than us. Any other input on this? It's still a work in progress, but we don't have to. But our intended audience is ultimately what we are going to put in the package for a public hearing in January. So. And I'm assuming, I was in touch with Henry today, I'm assuming that some of their description of the state of rules with the PUC, they would update for us. Because I know all that's there's been a lot of progress there. Rules are approved, the legislature has approved everything.
Yeah, as of the 15th, the rules are actually effective.
October, as I said.
Yes, I think it's October 15th. So they've been approved and they're eventually coming. As far as I know.
So I'm going to count on the coalition to update that.
Yeah, there's like 10 or 12 EAPs that are going before a handful are going to PUC approval.
Yeah, Lebanon's is already in.
Lebanon's been approved, yeah. So the somewhere between 10 and 12 are in wave 1. And those are all process of trying to get filed. Then there's some degree of urgency to do that.
should we just roll into the,
Getting update.
your update?
Yeah, just a quick, and really it's about, the real focus right now is on contract negotiations with all of the vendors. And I'll just quickly go through just to remind you who's in play, kind of where it is. Kind of the big nut or the big dollars that are flowing through is with Ascend Analytics. They're doing portfolio management. And they are also issuing a request for proposal to secure an LSE, a load serving entity. Because CPCNH at this point in the foreseeable future is not an LSE with ISO New England. They don't have the financial kind of wherewithal yet to do that, nor is Ascend Analytics an LSE in New England. So their contract, they're issuing an RFP, and that firm would be the one who actually goes out and procures the power, but it would be at the direction of Ascend Analytics and the coalition following the risk management policy that gets established. So, so there's a lot of work going on right now with Ascend Analytics to develop their kind of master agreement and then the statement of work. And they've been very, very good to work with so far. They're very talented gang. And also with Ascend, their scope is a little bit broader than just portfolio management. They've also have been secured to do some level of project management for this whole effort between now and through go live. So they kind of have the master schedule of all of the players, and there's weekly meetings now to kind of just keep the whole kind of the train moving forward.
So has there been any motion or movement to hire the director yet? Or the organization?
Yeah, so that's I'll get to that. Yep, that's in flight.
Okay.
So I will definitely mention that. Pete. And the other thing that Ascend Analytics is doing that is within their scope that is very important. There's three main documents we talked about. There's the cost sharing agreement between all the member communities. There is the risk management policy all around the procurement process and rate settings kind of embedded in there. And then there's the financial reserve policy in terms of how all that is going to get managed again among all of the member community. So those are three kind of very beefy documents that Ascend has within their scope to draft. And just the cost sharing agreement, a draft of it, I think just came out yesterday for initial review. And there's a schedule for them to be developing these other two. And it'll go through the review process by the coalition. And ultimately those documents get brought before all the member communities.
Yeah, each governing body has to sign them. Is that, we really, a town or city is not committed to anything really until we sign those.
Right.
We gotta sign the cost sharing agreement, the reserve policy,
And
risk management policy.
And so, again, one of the beauties of us being kind of a bit of a fast follower here is those policies will get drafted. They're going to be reviewed by at least approximately a dozen communities over the next several months, and kind of go from there. But that's within Ascend's scope of work as well. The other big piece is Calpine Energy Solutions. So that's the whole kind of customer facing side of the coalition. Call center data management, the customer relationship management system, billing, that's kind of all in Calpine's wheelhouse. And if you recall too, Calpine is providing us $750,000 of upfront spending money as long as it's somehow tied to go live. And so that was a big kind of relief to the coalition to have that money come along. So Calpine is busy gearing up. Contract negotiations are underway, but all these folks, while the contract negotiations are going on, they're very confident that this is going to get over the goal line. So they're actually starting to work. They're not just working the attorneys just aren't working in the contracts. The teams are actually working with the expectation that, you know, there's gonna be a good faith effort to get these over the goal line. And we just had a meeting in Concord for the last 3 hours on Calpine, kind of going over, they had their team in here for a conference tomorrow, the CENH conference, and so it was a good opportunity for the group to get together.
He has a whole section, they're all talking, Send is speaking,
Yes,
Calpine's on the
Yeah.
panel.
Calpine's one of the sponsors, I think, of the event.
Yeah.
So their VP, his name is Josh Brock, is speaking tomorrow. He's been a good, nice to work with. So that contract is in flight. River City Bank is the financial and banking services for CNH. And they're very active in the aggregation market in California. So that contract is moving along. It's much simpler. It's obviously very important. There's big bucks, but the contract itself, these other ones, particularly Ascend and Calpine, these contracts are very lengthy and detailed. And as well as the master service agreement. And then the other one they're working on is CENH. So they've contracted with Clean Energy New Hampshire for member services to be working with all the communities. And that's a much simpler contract. Something different for CENH. It's kind of new for them, but
Do we know who the face of that might be?
Well, one of the people was here.
She's the new, I think she got hired as the director of the circuit rider program.
Okay.
And she's the existing circuit riders that they have, and then they're adding 3 or 4 more, I think, over time. And that's the gang that's going to be working with Henry and Lisa Sweet and kind of resourcing out the member services side of the organization, because there's another, I think right now about 30 or 35 communities that are actively interested in this coalition. I heard yesterday that Concord now is taking a shine to the CPCNH. So there's just a lot in the pipeline, and Henry and Lisa Sweet can't be in all these communities every night pitching CPCNH. So the CENH, and they are taking on, I think, a lot, but you know, it's in their wheelhouse, and you know, they know the landscape and the contacts, so I think they'll do fine. But there's a lot to get them on speed. And then to your point, Peter, we have an RFP out for a search firm for the CEO, and I think I sent that around to the group today. And it went out to like a dozen search firms and executive search firms, and those proposals are due tomorrow. And then we're going to go through an evaluation process and eventually select the search firm and hopefully get them up and running. By the way, the fact that the organization is going to be hiring a CEO went out to like 200 different organizations and vendors that the coalition initially, I guess, was considering for services. So what they're trying to do is just let the whole community around the country know that this organization.
It seems odd, why do they need an RFP for a search? It's just like you're saying, it sounds like they'll probably get plenty good resumes.
Well, I mean, they wanted it to be a professional process and have someone who just said, you know, does all of the, you know, the searching and the background and the vetting and so forth. So it was just
They assist with contract negotiation, establishing the contract, or is that really just, you know, headhunting aspect of it?
they bring candidates before the coalition to eventually interview and select.
The coalition does the contract.
Yeah, so the expectation is that they'll be brought on as a contractor initially, because the coalition doesn't have HR policies and procedures in place yet, employment policies. So the expectation is they're going to be brought on as a contractor for some number of months and then converted over to a CPCNH employee. And then the CEO is then going to get involved with hiring his or her direct reports. Because they're looking to have, you know, some chairman areas, some in customer space. Some, you know, member services, whatever, they're probably gonna need a handful of direct reports to the CEO. But that's downstream. But there was discussion kind of back and forth whether you know, needed a search firm or not.
Yeah.
But it was just given the volume of work that the coalition has right now to stand up all these other things, they really thought it was money well spent to have someone kind of manage that and have the whole, at least impression of bringing this person on board, view, you know, professional.
Yeah.
Then, you know, just sending your resume to some mailbox. And so the hope is to have a CEO on board by somewhere in like the January, February, March timeframe. And this group really needs a kind of a full-time executive taking the bull by the horn.
Sure.
It's-
That's optimistic, get somebody hired
Probably
on
is.
board.
And just as a FYI, the salary ranges for these, at least in California, for the CPA executives are in like the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So that's kind of the ballpark of what this position would be, or how much of that is base versus you know,
Well, that's,
the
you
pay.
need to make 300 to afford a 2-bedroom house.
That's right. Yeah. I just, that's
They're not
kind
gonna
of
be
the
living in Portsmouth, they're living up in
Berlin.
Berlin or someplace.
But that's the, just as FYI, that's the range. There's also an RFP out for accounting services. There's the accounting for this whole process when you start to have all these power transactions and all the settlements with ISO New England. The accounting is pretty complicated. So they have an RFP out to hire an accounting firm to write her on this, as well as auditing.
So you had said a cost sharing agreement, when you was talking about that, was the draft of that or something that's floating around. I assume that's just how the costs are set for the ratepayers, right? Because it pitched originally as not being a cost to anybody. So is there a realization that communities involved need to start ponying up some money or somehow so what is the cost sharing agreement?
Yeah, I haven't taken a look at the draft yet, but it's really how, I mean, the organization will be incurring costs, right? On the procurement side, obviously labor, et cetera. And then how those costs are shared among the member organizations. And I mean, the intent is it's gonna has to balance out with the revenue that's coming in through rate making.
Right.
To cover the cost. But, you know, the various communities though may participate at different levels, be taking advantage of different services, have different rates, or like take advantage of different rate options. So the whole
So
process.
it's related to rate setting more so than
Yeah, and
your portion of the
reading of it,
communities that are participating because it was pitched as being a no cost to the
Yeah,
communities,
That's the intent.
uh,
That is still the.
which, you know, I would not be surprised if cost sharing is needed and people ponying up money, given all the things that you're saying in terms of standing up costs. You know, there's a significant amount of
Yeah, sharing might be more of a cost allocation. I mean, there's the cost of running this whole thing.
yeah,
And there's that needs to get apportioned out to the communities that are participating based upon their, you know, resident population. Right.
well, do you allocate it based on number of residents, percentage of residents, percentage of load?
Whether you have projects that are going on in your community versus not having, you know, renewable projects. So at the end of the day, there's cost and then there's revenue coming in. And the whole process of how that is all apportioned out to the member
yeah,
communities.
it's just interesting because it's incredibly complex. I'm blown away by, you know, the fact that volunteers have brought, you know, this to this far along so far. It's amazing, but I just it's staggering to me. Thinking about
Good bring, you know, Samuel.
Yeah, no, it's handled. Sure, yeah, but it's just, you know, there needs to be a process of how all the dollars flowing through this process get apportioned out to the member communities. And everybody's kind of just taking care of their fair share. But that it's covered by revenue coming in through rates, that there's no
Right.
expectation that there's leakage here that then has to be picked up by member communities in other ways. The intent is that the rate setting process covers costs.
Right.
And another just little fun fact here, the send right now, at least initially, and some of the California communities did this, rather than rate setting being overly complex, like it might be in utilities, is that the member rates would be a discount off of whatever the default service is at a point in time. So, you know, rather than getting into a complex rate making process, and they would just say, okay, default is here. That the CPCNH rate for the comparable default service would be 5% less, 10% less. Ultimately, it might get more sophisticated. There might be ability for different towns to have different rates, but the sense recommendation from their experience is that out of the gate, that it would be a discount on the point service, whatever the default service was.
And that would assume that when they go out to market, they can get rates that are lower. And if they're much lower, then
Yeah, so that's
Yeah, I mean, the cost sharing for general overhead is easy, to just divide that according to everybody's percent of usage. Percent hookups. But it gets trickier if the town wants a different bunch of tiered services. Or wants to procure a different power mix. And I'll be interested to see whether it comes down to a one size fits all.
I can't imagine,
Yeah, I think I was,
you can't have an a la carte for every community.
yeah, that just, I think that was an aspiration at one point,
Yeah.
but it's just. We're-
And remember, you have the cost of the power, then you have the cost of all these vendors, right? So, you know, there's fairly significant dollars flowing through the cost of
And you have the
third
cost
party services.
of building. Zero.
Yes. Yeah. And the thought is, you know, each community might have a different reserve. You like Portsmouth might want to have X amount go into the reserve, Portsmouth related. Another community might want to do something less. How all of that is. So this kind of gets back to where I was saying before, the accounting services side of this is very important to kind of review, make sure all the i's are dotted, t's are crossed, and then you have good auditing services. Because there's big bucks, there's hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through power supplies.
Yeah.
That'll only get bigger and bigger.
395 million just for first 1910,
Right. Yeah. So, and then the other regulatory item, as we talked about at the last, is there's this investigation that the PUC launched, looking at the default service procurement process by the utilities. And they're just getting that, it's an investigation. I think they're actually going to issue a.
Is that because the recent increase?
Yeah.
The rate?
yeah,
Yeah, just in terms of how the utilities go, because it's all about timing. Utilities go out to market, whether the market's low or high,
Yeah,
and then residents of the state get hit with that for the next 6 months.
yeah, they're not buying year out. they're buying-
Well, and they're not doing-
Market that.
Yeah.
For that.
they don't have the
Period.
flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, the utilities could easily do portfolio management, they did it before deregulation.
Right.
So, but they haven't, they were directed to and regulated for the past 20 years to do it the way they did.
Right.
As long as the markets are sleepy, everything's fine. But when you have craziness like this year, then people say, wait a second, why is the utility only going out in a certain month to procure power? That's stupid. You know? So we'll see where that goes, but I think that's a ways off.
Well, again, thank you for,
I have a question. So regarding the reserve fund, who in the city would be making that decision as to how much reserve would be set aside?
Yeah, it's a good question, Alice. They haven't gotten that far yet, and whether initially the reserve fund is, each community is kind of putting aside the same amount, or whether it's putting aside more or less. You know, my guess is, you know, our committee would have some input into city council.
Yeah. I think that would. How would the reserve tie to policy? I mean, if it was 5% off the default rate, if we said we wanted to do 4%, put the rest in, you know, home insulation. And be a policy option.
Yeah, I get, my vision of it was, this was very simplistic, is that the organization, CPCNH, would create a reserve fund.
Yeah.
And create like a revolving loan.
Yeah.
Bank, that proposals would come in, they'd say, okay, this is good for the organization, and we will
That's the
invest in
That's the California.
that, instead of being like, well, this community gets X% of this community gets X% of that, it's the organization benefits, because they can use it for rate stabilization, they can use it for.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta have a
There may be
reserve,
that as well. Maybe you'll have-
in addition,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a big initial focus of it, of the reserve is rate stabilization.
yeah, you gotta have,
So you can kind of shave off the peaks,
Yeah.
valleys, and keep rates stable. It's the only way, I mean, we can talk a lot about rate stability. And you can't make that happen, you know, the markets are the markets.
right,
But you can if you have. The intent is a reserve fund, but it is. But the thought is that, you know, maybe 50% of the reserve fund is used for rate stabilization and 50% is used for other stuff.
Right.
You know, projects, etc. But whether that's managed at the, I don't think it's gonna get managed at the CNH level. I think the communities, for the latter part that's associated around projects, etc.
Yeah.
I think it's at the community level, but I could be.
yeah, it's
We'll
interesting.
have those documents coming out here soon.
Yeah, because in my mind, the city really has no involvement other than that we help facilitate the creation of this. But once it happens, we're not dealing with the day-to-day management, yes, we have to finish from the board. That can set policy, but why would that give us, you know, we're the 50% of the load, why would we get 50% of the reserve? That's available to start doing projects, it just seems like.
Yeah.
But I know it's in the minutia, that's.
Yeah.
it's-
Well, we don't know that. I think it's another reason that's good to be in the second plane.
Yeah.
To see.
Yeah.
How this thing
Yeah.
takes shape.
And I think that whole project and other stuff is like phase 3, 4, and 5. The reserve initially is meant to help manage and keep rates stable through
Yeah.
through rocky times. That's what I think their initial objective is.
And if you go to the websites of some of the, you know, the California aggregations, you can see all those services. And you can see battery projects, kinds of things. So, you know, they're 10 years down the road ahead of us.
Yeah. And Ascend has said, and I don't remember what the number is, that within 12 months and within 24 months, the coalition should achieve a reserve balance based on its size of X. So they have history on what the glide path is to the value of the reserve over, you know, in the initial launch of the CPA.
Yeah.
With I think pretty much all of it going toward rate stability.
Which makes a lot of sense.
So that's
The other thing. Thank you again for your time and your talent, your knowledge. Giving them a good task. The survey. I shot that out to everybody. Did we have any comments on that? I thought it was a good survey.
Just what struck me out of the gate was it was a good survey for people with knowledge at our level. I felt like there was some questions that really,
Mhm.
you know,
We need to explain.
I think
why did you stay with Eversource? I mean, some of these people don't even know. You know, were you aware that you could have other options?
Was Eversource, I thought it was PSNA.
Yeah, but yeah, it just seemed to jump right into like a heavy technical knowledge level.
Yeah, I think I think the structure of Allison is great, and yeah, I had that same kind of take a little bit, and the other thing is, I think, and maybe this is with you, Stephanie, too, is to kind of reuse as much of the language as we've already vetted in the website and like the water survey and stuff. Yeah, it seems like the beginning here, we need like a what is community power paragraph, and I think we've had that paragraph or two that's already, and you know, Allison kind of took, I think, pieces of that, but we should, I think, be using any of these kind of channels just to kind of continue to hit the same, you know, all the same kind of language.
But I thought what the instrument sought to get from the public was
Well, you know, you're talking about it's for educated people, but I took it from, you know, there were a number of different surveys that we had access to, and I took basically from those. And as Kevin said, I took some of our language and parsed it a little bit to create the first paragraph. But really what I'm interested in is, I have a question at the end. Did anybody look at my question?
I think that was your question.
So I actually had to put community power in the search function on our website to find the page. And I think it should be easier to find than that. You know, I shouldn't have to put it in the search
Yeah.
function.
See the point?
So-
To the banner.
And then, should we have links to our YouTube videos, the meetings on that page that we have, because I didn't see that. Or should we have a separate header, like the energy department? As separate from sustainability or whatever? Just a thought.
Yeah, so really the question is, where does community power live
Right,
on the website? What goes with it?
right.
is its own kind of page.
It is, yeah, it's it's buried in within this, you know, the website.
I think it's hanging off of the sustainability.
Sustainability initiatives, yeah.
It probably should be its own, because it's not really, it goes beyond sustainability, right?
Yeah,
I think people are gonna be interested in it enough and are gonna wanna try to find out about it. And I think it's hard right now.
Yeah, and I think if we,
I think if we do a resources thing on it.
Yeah, and the other things, Henry said last time that we would have a logo, which we need for a lot of things. And I could easily see us putting that on the homepage, the way the Portsmouth 400 logos on the homepage. There's real estate there. But then having, because there are people who will queue on the logo, there are people who will queue on the words, so it needs to be defined. But I can move that page and
yeah. Well, and if we do all the outreach in your outreach plan. Should. Make it easy.
And then another question I had was regarding like, you know, I didn't know if there were additional questions that anybody wanted, such as level of education, or whether the responder would be likely to participate in the program or not, or if that's too far out. Are we happy with the types of questions that were asked?
I was always taught that education is a proxy for income. So
Okay.
you can either have income or you can have education.
Okay.
Pretty much get this.
Okay.
People are more comfortable doing their education.
So it just in the, again, I think what we should kind of reuse like what is community power. So it's a nice description. Better source studied as.
Do we want to have the diagram?
You could, but I think just use the intro to the survey and be kind of a nice succinct education piece again. And we say here that we choose an electric energy supplier that offers competitive rates. That's kind of the broker model. We're not gonna be selecting suppliers to offer rates. We're gonna be procuring load. And the coalition's gonna be developing rates, you know, it's not gonna be a supplier that's offering competitive rates. You know what I'm saying?
That was what you had corrected me on. You had said that, CPCNH was looking at having a number of suppliers.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be procuring load into the portfolio, and then Ascend Analytics will be helping to develop the rates. So there's not the broker model is where you go out and get a supplier that you're contracting. for-
Well, CPCNH is doing that though.
Yeah, so but it's not where this says includes the ability to choose an electric energy supplier. We're not gonna be giving residents the opportunity.
No, the benefits of aggregating community power include the ability to choose energy suppliers. So I could put, the benefits of working with, CPCNH include the ability to choose energy suppliers, or the fact that CPCNH chooses the energy suppliers, or,
It more allows you to choose rates, to choose products that allow you to adjust your energy, your it's dirty energy, clean energy, you know, your percentage of
so,
green energy.
the benefits of aggregating community power include the ability to choose electric providers.
So you have language in the CERT in the water bill, I suppose, it says community power empowers towns, cities and counties to choose their source of electric energy.
Okay,
The program allows residents to take advantage of this pooled supply, stay with Eversource or a third party supplier.
okay.
So again, I think some good effort went into some of these other documents that, you know. You don't have to recreate the wheel, it's kind of.
Thank you for pulling that out.
Okay.
That rings true after 3 months.
Yeah.
It's good.
And we had some of it in the FAQs as well. And also, we get into this whole renewable 50%, 100%. And I think you brought it up, Counselor, that I think we need a sentence into Ben's point that says something about, you know, New Hampshire, you know, state, whatever its regulation requires, the renewable portfolio standard, you know, that supply contain a certain amount of
The tier
renewable.
sources.
Default requires like 20,
Yeah,
30%.
and it's even the competitive suppliers have to meet the standard too, don't they?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, so,
The LSC's have the application.
yeah, so we had a general statement that
So if I just put after CPCNH will offer several contract options differing by price and renewable energy content according to the state energy standards, renewable energy standards, or whatever
renewable portfolio standard, but and then you can give the percentage, that percentage being X or 2023. You know, when we start saying 50 and 100%, what?
Why is that important for this, I wonder, like we started out with, we're going to the general public. I mean, do they really?
Later, we're saying, we're asking if they want 50% renewable or 100% renewable. And they don't even know today how much renewable energy is in the default service, so it's like, we're asking them to comment on a level of renewable in the option when they don't even know
Well, I
what's
think,
in it today.
no, the question's a little different than that. It's the question of, would you pay more to get 100%? Really what we're trying to find.
We're not saying that. We're saying, do you want a low cost option? Do you want 50% renewable? I guess it's implied that that's gonna cost more. But
Or you could put in that, you know, lowest cost option, and put the current,
Parenthetically.
the current requirement is
22%.
25%.
that's what I'm getting at, the low cost option that meets the current minimum RPF. And that, or a 50% renewable option that may or may not cost more. Right? I mean, who's not gonna want a 50% renewable if it's
It's the same price,
the same price?
less.
We're
Yeah.
so that's where, to your point, I think we're we're kind of, some of the language here assumes that residents are gonna understand,
Right.
the market a little bit. So,
Yeah, I mean, to me, the purpose of this is to gauge the demand out there.
Yeah.
For greener, a greener power,
yeah,
a greener
What's-
mix.
Then you don't have to minimize.
I just got.
like 25 or 60. But I think even in the, it's a nice, you can kind of come down the language a little bit, just as a FYI for residents, that current regulation in New Hampshire requires that default service supply contain 25% renewable energy. You know, then it's just starting to educate the customer. Because then when we start talking about 50 and 100% options, it's like, whoa, that's double or, you know, triple what is in default today. So I just, you know, a sentence that just educates them around, I think helps with some of the following questions.
Okay.
You were all.
Yeah, in
22.5.
general, wearing my editor's hat, I learned a long time ago that the average American in New England actually has about a sixth, that it's best to write for a sixth grade
Yeah.
reading level, and that's what USA Today always said. So I agree that simplifying language, and the flyer did a great job with that. So it's,
Okay,
you've got, Allison's got the key questions down. Just using language that they may have seen before.
Yeah.
But I think if we incorporate some of that flyer language up front, that was, to me, when I went through, I was like, it just jumped out as being like, it assumed we knew a lot already. That was the only,
okay,
but I thought the questions were good. I mean, it was just a lead into it. That was.
yeah, so we'll go back to the flyer language for the top. Maybe that's done there, so that we can clarify what the state RPS is right now.
Yeah, in real simple terms, it's just as an FYI for residents.
Well, would that, should that be next to lowest cost energy option that meets state of New Hampshire renewable portfolio standards for renewable energy, or?
I would put it in the front where we say, like, if we use this language here.
So community power in Portsmouth, and then put it in there where we say CPCNH will offer several contract options differing by price and renewable energy content in accordance with the state of New Hampshire renewable portfolio standards.
Or something as simple as currently 22.5% for. I'm sure state from yes.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, even that kind of language, you know, we were like, oh, yeah. You know, the average person's gonna be, what the hell's a renewable portfolio?
What's an RSA?
Yeah. But yeah, what's an RSA? Yeah.
In the beginning, we say this program allows residents to take advantage of this pool supply, stay with Eversource for a third-party supplier. It seems like there we can just add a sentence. You know, that current New Hampshire law requires a minimum of, you know, the
22.5% renewable content
for
for supply.
for supply.
Yeah.
Just, boom,
And you get it in up front.
you get it up front.
Yeah, and then somebody who's sophisticated would say, well, it goes up every year, it's like, yeah, whatever.
And we
You
don't say
already know
renewable.
business, you're okay.
Like renewable portfolio standard, that's too
I
complicated.
think what
you
you
know?
just, I think what you said was a nice and understandable way of presenting it.
Yeah, because most residents probably don't realize that there is a requirement.
Do you and Allison want to work on that?
Yes. Do we want to add a question that asks, we're asking who's your supplier? Why did you stay with Eversource? That kind of question. We want to ask a question that if they were with the third, have they ever been with a third party supplier? But went back to Eversource and ask them why? Why did they go back to Eversource?
Do you actually think that somebody would have done that?
Yeah,
I did it once.
What would
Would
we,
you? Really?
Well, it was so low, the default service was so low a couple of years ago. I was ending my contract and it was above the default and it stayed low for a while.
You stop for 100% renewal, right? You stopped offering it. So
Yeah,
that's-
so-
that's what-
You could build off that, you got question 3, say if you answered question 1 was third party supplier, why did you choose a supplier? And then you could follow that with, have you stayed with that supplier or, have you left the
Yeah.
supplier, and if so, why?
That's a third party supplier.
Yeah, if you left third party supplier,
I'm,
you're not back to default. So just insert another question right after that.
and why, is it rates? Speak to the.
Are you saying if not, why, or if so, why? You say,
You're the English person.
well,
No, if so,
have you stayed? You can answer yes or no. Do you want to know the answer of?
if you
Do
left.
you want to, if you left, do you also want to know why you stayed, or do you really?
No, I think they said that
Yeah.
they choose a supplier,
Yeah.
I think it's really why they left.
okay,
And then rates, customer service or other.
Want to be specific?
So just under it, it would be A, rates, B. Customer service, or 3 other, and then leave a space for them to respond what the other was.
okay. We'll do another turn on that.
And I
Is there
can,
any on the, like when we say the lowest cost energy option, we say that be, which meets the renewable standard.
Yeah, I think, didn't you put that?
We got it up
That-
front.
Yeah, we got
I
it.
think she put, and I think she also put it right in there. That meets the current.
But the 50% renewable and 100% would, is there a cost element to that answer though? That is fixed?
Stephanie's,
and I.
Stephanie, you're not fun.
Thank you, thank you.
She probably do it in this, yeah, as well.
Stephanie, you were gonna say,
Yeah, I have the flyer in my thumb drive, but it's a PDF, so I can't easily pull it out and substitute, but I can do that with the Word document and then share it with Allison and Kevin. In this document that's been edited, so. That's starting point.
I just have one other thought on number 7. We're saying circle all that apply. Circle a bunch of them. I just wondered if we. And again, we have, I think, the benefits laid out. Value proposition documents to kind of have the list. Do we want them to rank them from? Like 1 being what's most important to them to what's least important, so then. Because otherwise, we're gonna have, they're gonna circle 5 out of 7. I don't know what.
So put a chart, put a little table on the side of it for you just to rank,
Yeah,
just
we've
rank.
done other surveys like that, which
Yeah.
brings up the
What's
question
important
of
to you?
how are you delivering this survey? I mean, circling presumes, and there will be some people who want it in paper. But are we putting this into SurveyMonkey or?
the initial thought with Karen was postcard with a QR code and a link to survey. So we gather electronically, but we get every.
Because otherwise somebody has to go through all manual.
Yeah,
No.
do you give a, if you want a hard copy, call so and so, we'll get you a hard copy. Some people will be like, I don't want, I'd like a hard copy. Just,
It's really only a handful, but people
Yeah.
do.
Well, we put hard copies at the library.
Give me your cell phone.
What about the senior center?
go to library.
Library and senior center.
Yeah.
So I'll hand deliver one to her.
Alice, are you okay with ranking them, like saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Oh,
yeah.
or
That
the least.
sounds much better, actually.
Just gives us maybe a little more data.
Okay. Quick look at November.
So we have the, sorry, I'm thinking outreach, just to say that we have the button up event on November 3rd at the library, and I just added that first time to the newsletter today. I really want that logo. And the press release is out. I have to check with Rye what they've done in terms of anything, because
It's on
I'm
their
pretty sure we agreed
website.
that I'd help. I do the media distribution.
So the press release is out.
Yes. Now it's on the newsletter, and I haven't put it on our website yet, but I will do that tomorrow.
So we had just one other remaining through September was because that's the only question. That was sort of- So that's still in play. And we said for October, finalize the AP draft. For one, we should be able to get pretty close to the first draft, right? We said we're gonna have a technical review, the EIP by CPCNH. I don't think we're gonna get that. That's not this one. City council update.
Yep.
Execute monthly community engagement channels, start to come. And CPCNH board vendor service contracts. That will monitor that. So for November, your question, sort of adjust the EAP version 1.1 based on CPCNH's technical and council reviews. So I don't know, schedule for that.
Yeah, although Henry has he's seen our goal section.
But you could probably review the goal section.
Yep.
CPCNH contracts, something like that. Execute monthly community engagement.
I had a note for October that, I think, John, you were gonna reach out to the Eco Club.
Kate was gonna,
Okay,
Kate was also gonna reach out to the chamber. So I'll check it.
We're gonna inquire about the email informational piece to the chamber.
I think that might have been me. That one. So I'll follow up.
So as far as the review of our plan by the CPCNH, we probably can get them all to Henry.
Yep.
As well as I have to bring the draft to the council.
I was gonna line it all up for the public hearing. But wouldn't hurt to have the council.
I could make it a some too, because we're for the public hearing, not till June.
So let's. Then if we could get your look at all of that in meetings. Okay. Just attach this. And I'll do my little history of how we got to where we are now. Then we can give that to Henry in November. There. And we've got the draft EAP. Pretty well done. And we need a logo.
We don't need that for the EA.
so who's working on the logo?
Well, Henry mentioned, and then I looked at the website, and they have basically blended in a way that I can't duplicate. The CPC logo and a city's logo. Some of the cities have gone completely different with kind of our ready approach. Not the little man, but the lightning bolts. But others have just taken a city seal and put the surround of the CPC horizon and the colors. So I tried to do a blend of ours, and I just couldn't get it to work properly. But we made a big deal about the fact that they're happy to do that.
Oh, okay.
Sources for. Yeah, we'll liaise on that.
When were we planning on doing the survey?
I thought it was going out in December.
Early December.
Yeah.
Ahead of the holiday.
Yeah, ahead of the holiday.
And then, we've only got one council meeting in November and two in December, so. Cue up your presentation to align with the survey, so it's top of mind. Everyone in Portsmouth watches the city council.
Within your penny.
What did you think?
Well, you know that clip I sent from whatever paper it was that published about Lebanon. All that interesting material, I am part of Portsmouth Climate Solutions, and I sent it to that team and got a lot of response. Well, where's Portsmouth? What's Portsmouth doing? You know, so I did a little blurb on where we are and what's happening with us, but you know, I think that everybody expects Portsmouth to be a leader. So.
Well, for once, the other side of the state was ahead of. It's steady progress. As you all know, the articles coming out of the Herald there have exactly when various community power people around the state could track Jeff's phone calls. Talk to, did he talk to you?
Jeff McMahon?
Did you talk to Chris Parker?
Yeah, talking to Chris Parker. Who prefer to go below.
On the energy markets then? Anything? What's your forecast?
That's,
Yeah.
the supplier market's drying up.
Oh, yeah?
That would drive prices up. More.
I mean, you've heard the news about senior bills, right? Well, there's a power plant in Boston, it's directly connected to the LNG facility. It's gone out of business. Regional grid operator said, no, you can't pay because you're so important to keep the lights on. You can't let it be. We're gonna pay you whatever it costs you to stay in business for 2 years. First bills are now hitting. And it runs on LNG, which is based on low prices.
Right.
This contract is forecasted to cost the region maybe $150 million. We're only $70 million. It's so risky, and it's a direct pass through. It's so risky that the companies that buy and sell competitive supply are saying, I'm out of the game until this contract is gone. Literally. They're just, the suppliers are walking.
Don't knock on wood.
How big of a plant is it?
It's not really the plant itself, it's the LNG terminal. And the only way for the electric grid operator to keep the LNG terminal is to participate in these. It would be complicated, but it's so risky. that even the-
So the LNG is an export terminal. Import terminal. That's not.
We buy it from Trinidad and Tobago. That's only because the Jones Act. So much better to get easy energy.
So we locked in at 11 cents for next year,
We're thrilled.
but 24-25. FY 24-25. But it's a big hit, and it's a close to $1 million increase. Power costs for the cities, we were at 6.8. Yeah, I was.
District strip in New Hampshire is 22 right now.
I know,
National Grid just filed one in Massachusetts for 34 cents. They have 14-cent T&D rates, they're like 48 cents a kilowatt hour. And the biggest problem is that there's a legitimate chance the lights go out. If we have 40-something cent power and the lights go out, there's gonna be. No joke. It's chaos right now.
it's because all the demand, Europe, all that power, all the LNG.
We have known about this problem for 10 years, arguably longer.
Yeah, pipe capacity is always.
Pipe capacity. We've thwarted every attempt to do
Yeah.
something about it.
Yep,
People in Maine are saying we don't need power lines, people in northern New Hampshire saying we don't need power lines. Now, rubber's gonna hit the road, and there's.
everybody wants to electrify vehicles and everyone wants to, you know, do everything in it's like boats.
So that's where we are.
Yeah,
Source out a project bringing natural gas from the shales, eastern
Yes.
New York, and Pennsylvania, and it's ready to go.
Build storage
And
facility.
they got canned, the governors were supporting it until they didn't support it. And then it was axed.
Look at this power line in Maine.
Yeah.
The utility, the